Hello, my name is James and this is the 92 podcast. Each episode will shine the spotlight on one of the 92 teams that make up the top 4 leagues in English League football, talking to their fans, playing silly games and quizzes, and learning what it's like to be a supporter of their team. This time, we focus on a team who've won their opening 4 league games for the first time since 1927, which puts them top of the championship.
But there was a chance that he may be our manager one day. It was almost at that level, and there's probably people listening who are Bristol City fans saying I'm talking absolute tripe, but he was actually clapped off by people rather than booed off.
Come the end of the season, the aim surely still has to just be trying to get into the playoffs, because City fans have had to wait since the 2008 campaign, 2007, 2008, the last time we were in there in the playoffs, and we went to Wembley and had our hearts broken by Hull City and Dean Windass.
Anything could happen. Anything could happen this season in terms of who will win the league, who will win the championship, and it might just work out all right for us. Who knows?
That's right, the spotlight is on Bristol City for this episode. And as with the other episodes with Barrow, Doncaster and Aston Villa, I only know the basics about Bristol City. So to help me, I'm joined by Patch Warner, who's the host of the Bristol podcast Peeps in a Podcast. Plus we'll hear from Toby Osborne, lead commentator for Robins TV, throughout the episode as well. Hello Patch, welcome to the 92 podcast.
Hi James, thanks for having me.
How are you doing? Have you been a Bristol City fan all your life?
Yeah, I'm in my 40th year as a human being now, and I think about 35 of those have been spent, I'd say, at Ashton Gate. I haven't been down there much, obviously, in the last few months, but 35 years I think I've racked up now as a Bristol City fan. So
you've obviously seen a lot of highs and lows then? Yeah,
we've been consistently average, I'd say, over that period of time. We were in the top flight in the late 70s, which obviously I didn't see, being born in 1981. But we have definitely had some highs, some notable highs, getting into the playoff final in the championship. I think back in 2008, where we were beaten by a solitary Dean Windass goal on probably our worst performance of the season. I think we did choke a little bit. Obviously, a few years ago, beating Man United at Ashton Gate to send us into the semi-finals of the Carabao Cup, beating Liverpool at Anfield, are sort of three notable ones there. But we've always been in sort of the Championship or League One, or actually League Two as well in my tenure. I think we're the biggest city in population terms that hasn't actually been in the Premier League. So, but as you say, things are going well at the moment. There's every chance this year, but I've said that a few times in the past.
How did you come to be supporting Bristol City rather than your neighbours, Bristol Rovers?
Oh, you can't say those words. Well, my dad was actually, I don't know if you know Bristol at all, but they're sort of south of the river and north of the river. And my dad's from south of the river in Bedminster. And that's basically, it was quite near to the ground, living in Bedminster. It was more or less in Bedminster, Ashton Gate. But it's due to my dad. I think his dad took him down when he was a boy, and it's just sort of carried on from there. And I've got my own boy now as well, but we're a few years off. He's only almost 3, so we're a few years off of that. So looking forward to continuing that down the chain.
So what's the relationship like with the other Bristol team?
It's okay. We're separated by currently one whole league. I think they're down the bottom of League One at the moment. When I was in school, sort of age, 10 to 16, really, in secondary school, we were actually quite close together, and we had a number of local derbies during that time. And I just feel really sorry for sort of the teenagers of today not having those local derbies. It was, you'd go into school on a Monday morning, and obviously if we won, then we would tell the Rovers fans all about it, and vice versa. But we played in the same football teams. We work in the same place, Bristol City and Bristol Rovers fans, and that rivalry has diminished a little bit over the years by the fact that we haven't been in the same leagues for, I think it's like 18 years, 19, 20 years now. There is a rivalry, but it's a reduced rivalry now, which I think is a bit of a shame.
So you mentioned that the rivalry is diminished there. So is there any other clubs that you would consider to be rivals instead of them now?
Well, I guess the other local ones you've got are Cardiff and Swindon. Mainly, I think over the last few years, certainly it's been Cardiff has been the closest rivalry because we've been in the same league. So we've had a few notable rowdy games against Cardiff, and actually we've come out on top the last few. We beat them last year for sure with Josh Brownhill getting a great goal at Cardiff. And I can remember us beating Cardiff at Ashton Gate quite a bit as well in recent years. So that's probably the sort of the closest rivalry at the moment, I'd say, is Cardiff City.
So your home matches are played at Ashton Gate. It's been a while since fans have obviously been in attendance at matches, but what is the atmosphere usually like on a match day?
It's an interesting question. So the last game I went to was in March. We played Fulham at home and we were celebrating 125 years of the club. The club was actually formed in 1894 and we originally called Bristol Southend. We didn't change our name to Bristol City until 1897. So it was a 125-year celebration and we had loads of ex-players down there. I managed to get into hospitality that day and we had lots of ex-players milling around, as well as the chaps from this country. Don't know if you're a fan of that, but it was good to meet those guys. But yeah, that day the atmosphere was fantastic, absolutely buzzing. It was almost as if people knew they weren't going to be going for a while. But yeah, that was a great atmosphere. But we have struggled on occasion as a home fan base to keep the momentum going in the singing and the atmosphere. So, yeah, often if you get a big away following down there, like Leeds, for example, when they came down last few seasons, the atmosphere in the away end has been fantastic, and I think we've got a section in the corner, section 27 or section 82 as they're referred to, which is the singing section, and that side of that corner of the ground is always buzzing. There's always singing, win, lose or draw. They're absolutely fantastic. So we just need to spread that around a little bit. I put a suggestion forward that they should all sort of break up into 4 equal parts and spread themselves around the ground, because it's like anything, as soon as one person starts doing it, that sort of happiness spreads and the singing spreads. It's like being part of a crowd affects your behaviour, that sort of mentality. But sometimes it can be quite quiet. But yeah, I don't know if you've been down, but we've got an amazing stadium now. It's a stadium fit for the Premier League. And we just need to work on that atmosphere a bit, in my opinion. When we're winning and doing well, like at the moment, 4 wins in the league out of 4. I would imagine the next game, if we went down and were allowed to go into the ground, the atmosphere would be electric. So yeah, it's an interesting question. It's one that's not consistent, I'd say.
So is there anything else that the club can do? Obviously, you mentioned the loud people spreading off into 4 different sections, but is there anything that the club themselves could do to make the atmosphere a little bit better, do you reckon?
I don't know, really. I mean, we've got the big sort of Titantron screens in each of the corners now for the goals and advertising and all that sort of stuff. In years gone by, when we had like a much smaller scoreboard, they would sort of put songs up on the screens to sort of initiate the singing almost. That seemed to work quite well. Like "Come On You Reds" and that sort of thing. So I think that might be something that they could possibly do, but we shouldn't need to, really. It should be organic. It should be the fans should just get behind the team and get the singing going. But yeah, I think it is definitely one where it's drawn on the performance on the pitch. It's one of those sort of catch-22 situations, isn't it? You want to cheer the players on to get the performance, but they probably it works the other way as well. We need the players to be showing us some grit and determination to get the fans going. So yeah, it's one that I think should be organic. I don't think there's really much they can do, really. I mean, it's interesting at the moment with this, stock crowd noise that they're using on TV.
Yeah.
Whether they could play a little bit of that and the undertones to get things going or not, I don't know. But yeah, it shouldn't be needed, really.
Do you think it'll be that much of a problem? Obviously, once we've got back into stadiums and stuff, I think there'll be more of an atmosphere, really, won't there? Because we've been deprived of it for so long.
Absolutely, yeah. We really have taken it for granted, haven't we? Going to football matches. I've been going to a lot of non-league games with a friend of mine who does ground hopping, Adam Thurston. He's probably someone you want to have a chat to. He's on doing the 92, and now he's sort of doing the 292 with all the non-league grounds. But yeah, it's an interesting one. It's something that we have really taken for granted, and I think if we were to go back in there next week, particularly with how well we're doing on the pitch, everyone would be buzzing, and it'd probably be the loudest you'd ever heard us sing, I expect.
So how are you coping without being able to physically go see Bristol City play?
Not very well. It's become a part of my life, really, for the last, as I say, 35 years. And since, I started travelling to away matches as well, probably sort of 10 years ago, it just became obviously part of your life, really. And I really struggled the last few games of last season, not being able to go to the game. But saying that, we've got to be sensible and put health first and everyone else's health first. So we've got Robin's TV, which, as you said, Toby Osborne is the head commentator on that, and they do a great job in building up the game throughout the week, and the commentary. We get ex-players on there as well, and current staff, notably Brian Tinian in recent weeks, and Rene Gilmartin, who's the goalkeeping coach/player. So I'd say that it's sort of as good as it can get, really, without actually going to the game. I mean, I'm hoping beyond hope that we can start to get some people into the stadiums if this petition is successful to start trialing it safely, because they're doing it in other countries, aren't they? I think Germany, notably, the other day I saw had 1,000 or 2,000 fans in there, and they were all separated out and things like that. So, yeah, it's become more of a 3 till 2 till 5 event than a midday till 6 event. Which sometimes we just need that blowout. I don't know about yourself, but I've got two children, and I am. It's great that I'm spending more time with them, but equally, we also need a bit of our own time as well. So
it's just an escape, really, isn't it?
It massively is an escape. And I've been going down with a friend now for the sort of past 5 years, just the two of us, because I used to go with my family. When we weren't playing well towards the end of last season and seasons gone by, and the football wasn't great, he was sort of saying, I don't know if I can be bothered anymore. I don't know if I want to come, because it's the same stuff that we're churning out every week on week, and the performances weren't great. We were just nicking a win or losing. And I said, look, even if we were playing terrible football and we were in, the Hellenic League or whatever league you want to say, I would still come down, because it's the day that I look forward to, win, lose or draw. So I would definitely still be going.
So as mentioned at the start of the episode, I did speak to Toby Osborne. He's the lead commentator for Robin's TV, and I started by asking him how he thinks the season's gone so far.
It's been a brilliant season so far. Of course, we're now headed up by our new head coach, Dean Holden, formerly the assistant to Lee Johnson prior to his departure towards the end of last season. And it's been a start to the season that nobody really expected. Well, certainly the fan base didn't expect. He's brought a new lease of life into the team, newfound confidence, newfound excitement and love for playing football as well, which is pretty clear to see from some of the players that were starting to look a bit forlorn under Lee Johnson. They've been revitalised, really. He's flanked by two pretty experienced coaches in Keith Downing and Paul Simpson, who again have kind of hit the ground running with the squad. They've obviously got links to the England setup and the England youth system, guiding them to various different tournaments over the years. They have good, strong relationships with the likes of Casey Palmer, Jada Silva, and Steven Sessignon, who Bristol City have brought in on loan from Fulham. And by and large, the start of the season has been massively helped by the signings that were made in the summer. as well. Alfie Mawson has come in from Fulham on loan, as well as Steven Sessegnon, straight into the starting 11 and is now captaining the side following the injury to our centre-half, Thomas Callas. Mawson has hit the ground running, a real calming presence at the back, brilliant with the ball at his feet. His distribution from the back is superb and more than any of us really expected, and it kind of surprises a lot of City fans as to why he's now no longer with Fulham. He was tipped, I think, by some to actually go to the 2018 World Cup when Gareth Southgate was picking his squad prior to that tournament. It's been brilliant, a real star for City so far. Of course, we opened up the campaign with a decent win over Coventry, who are really good, and then followed up with wins over Stoke, Sheffield Wednesday, and more recently Nottingham Forest, which led to Sabri Lamucci's sacking for them. We've also brought in Chris Martin, whose contract expired with Derby County in the summer, and I think a few City fans were unsure as to what his kind of intentions were as a player. He obviously turned down a new contract with Derby County during the summer, but he's coming straight in, and his hold-up play is immense. He's not the quickest over the ground, as many people listening to this will be aware, but his hold-up play, his vision and his finishing is superb. 4 assists already this season, and he's already starting to form a pretty strong partnership with the preferred front two alongside Nahki Wells. He's keeping Jeju out the side. Jeju was our top scorer last season. We kind of have this quartet up front now of Nahki Wells, Chris Martin, and then Jeju, and our young forward Antoine Semenyo, who was recently linked with Chelsea to come off the bench. So our attacking talent has been brilliant, and something that was criticised under former manager Lee Johnson. And then second to that, we've got so many central midfield options, creative options from midfield. Jamie Patterson, who did go out on loan during some part of last season to Derby County, is a changed man under Dean Holden.
And we'll hear a little bit more from Toby towards the end of the episode. So Patch, coming back to you, you've already mentioned some of your highlights of supporting Bristol City, but is there any specific ones that come to mind?
Yeah, I'd say for me it was the double winning season back in I think it was I lose track of time, but I think it was 2016 17 season with Steve Cottrell as manager. When we won the double, we won League One, and we won the whatever it was called at the time, the Freight Rover Trophy. I was referred to it. No, it was the Auto Windscreen Shield. What's it called at the moment? The
Johnston's Paint Trophy.
That's it. I think it was the Johnston's Paint. So we won that, and obviously got promotion, and the team that we had was absolutely awesome. We had Aidan Flint at the back, who probably was one of our top goal scorers, if not our top goal scorer that season. He got a hat-trick in the final game when we beat Walsall 8-2. It's lots of memorable performances, and obviously a trip to Wembley to boot, with that victory. So the double winning season, that was whilst the ground was being redeveloped. So we only had sort of 3 sides of the ground as well at that point, which regardless of that fact, the atmosphere was still fantastic. And I'll never forget the final game when we were lifting the trophy, playing "We Are the Champions." I was sort of sat with my mum and dad and my brother, and it's just something that you won't ever forget. So that's probably the highest point for me personally.
So from the highest of the high to the lowest of the lows, what are some of the worst experiences you've had as a Bristol City fan?
Sticking in my mind is probably as a game at Ashton Gate where we got beat 5 or 6-0 at home by Cardiff. As I said earlier, there is a bit of a local rivalry there, and I think we were about 4 or 5-0 down in the first half, and people started to sort of walk out. I've never walked out early of a football match, a Bristol City match, I should say. And that's the closest I've got to doing it. But, you're there for the high highs and the low lows. So, that was definitely one. And there was one which I wasn't at the game, but I think it was again, Cardiff or Swansea, probably Swansea, where Brian Tinnion, a Bristol City legend who took over from being a player to being manager. He was manager when we lost, I think it was 6 or 7 at one of those clubs, Swansea, I think it was. And to see him sort of sat in the dugout completely bereft of ideas and wondering what he was going to sort of do next, that sort of thing. That was pretty hard to take, because then he sort of drifted away from the club and sort of moved abroad, and we never really had a chance to say goodbye. But luckily, he's now back down with us and been back down with us for quite some time now. He's a loans manager at the moment, looking after all the players that are going out on loan and things like that. So we've got that chance to sort of see him more often now. But that was quite upsetting.
So, of the players over the years who've donned a Bristol City shirt, who are some of your favourites?
Well, mentioning there Brian Tinian, he's been there for so long, that he was there throughout my sort of late teens, early 20s, and a player that had everything really. And he had 551 appearances, 42 goals. I've just got the 125 years program in front of me, so it's just I'm not a statter. I didn't know those off the top of my head, but yeah, he came to us from Newcastle, and where he was playing with people like Paul Gascoigne and that. So he is a player who had everything. A magic left foot, could play sort of left midfield, centre midfield. I remember he had one instance where we were hanging on to a victory, and he was literally throwing himself head first into tackles and blocking the ball and things like that. But other than him, Scott Murray, who's currently kitman down there, has been a Bristol City. If you ask people in Bristol who is the Bristol City legend, they would probably mostly say Scott Murray. And as the Flying Scotsman, he was a goal scoring machine for a number of seasons, really. And I'm actually fortunate enough to now play in the same five-a-side team as him. One of my best friends was Bristol City captain in the early 2000s. Went to sort of primary school with him. He's actually 40 today, so happy 40th birthday, Joe Burnell. And now he plays in the same five-a-side team as us. And obviously, he was playing with Scott Murray in his heyday, should we say. So he drafted him into our five-a-side team sort of 5 or 6 years ago, and he's still playing now. So it's quite strange sometimes when I sort of look up and pass to Scott Murray, a Bristol City legend. And Lewis Carey is another one to note as well. And he's our record appearance holder. But in my earlier years as well, I just would like to mention, we're a club that's always had wingers up until recently, where we've gone sort of 3-5-2 or 5-3-2, however you want to look at it. And that is one of the reasons why we've lost Nick Eliasson. He couldn't get into our team the last sort of this season and towards the end of last season, because we went to this sort of 3 centre backs and 2 wing backs approach. So now he's moved on. But yeah, we've always had wingers, and when I was growing up, it was people like Alan Walsh, Dave Smith, Greg Goodridge, Junior Bent. The list goes on and on of our wingers. So yeah, we've had so many good players. We've had Andy Cole, who was with us for probably only a season and a bit when he signed for us from Arsenal, and then went off to Newcastle. So notably him. There's been so many. Tammy Abraham came down and had a great season for us a few years ago. A number. I could go on for days.
So are there any players that you didn't particularly like, or you were glad to see the back of?
Blimey, that's an interesting question. I'm not someone who's got a lot of hate. I'll give anyone a chance. And even the players that have come down that haven't had the level of skill that we've come to expect, they almost become like fans' favourites for trying. One notable one is Bass Savage. I don't know if you remember, but he was actually through on goal and to get his first goal for Bristol City, and literally fell over his own feet. And he was on Soccer AM. They picked up on it on Soccer AM, and he took it so well. But even people like him, they're almost like cult heroes.
Is there any players that have played for Bristol City in the past that you think would still be able to get into the side today?
Well, obviously Tammy Abraham's probably one, even though he's been a naughty boy in recent weeks. But yeah, no, he would obviously get into the team, and we've lost one that probably is the most high profile one at the moment is Luke Ayling, right back for Leeds. We lost him. I don't know whether it was a falling out with the manager or what, but we lost him to Leeds. and he would definitely be knocking on the door to get into our team at the moment. And on occasions, I'm sure Scott Murray would come on for the last 5 minutes and still do a job.
So what about managers then? We'll talk about the current manager in a little while, but who are some of the managers you've loved and some you really were not keen on?
Not keen on. So this is an easier one than the players. So we've had a fair few managers in my time, notably in recent times, Sean O'Driscoll. I just never really took to him, to be honest. He was someone who wasn't very empathetic in interviews, didn't seem to come across very well. We rarely got what I would consider as attractive football from him. So there's one. Obviously, a highlight would be Steve Cottrell and also Gary Johnson. So Gary Johnson got us to the playoff final against Hull that I spoke about earlier, and Steve Cottrell we had the double winning season under him. And when we went up to the championship, it was just the results didn't go his way for the first sort of couple of months, and he was changed. So yeah, they're notably Gary Johnson and Steve Cottrell. Just before that, we had Danny Wilson, who was manager when Joe was down there, and we had a few successes under him, and a few lost playoff finals in League One. So yeah, there's a couple there of note. Just before that, Joe Jordan was manager when I was sort of growing up a couple of times actually. He was player manager first of all, and then went away and sort of came back as manager. But yeah, we've had some pretty decent managers. We've also had a couple of flops. We had a Swedish guy called Benny Lennartsson, who was mostly famous for wearing a baseball cap and throwing it into the air when we scored. That's about as much as I care to remember about his tenure, to be honest. But no, we've had some good ones, and obviously a big mention to Lee Johnson. As well, who got sacked earlier this year, and it ended on a bit of a sour, a bit of a sour note. I was quite emotional. We were recording a podcast when the news was announced, and we sort of did live reaction and captured our faces when we found out. He had a good 5 years with us, just year on year improvement in the league. Literally, like we progressed up the league and ended up finishing sort of 7th or 8th, I think, was our highest league position. But there was that year-on-year improvement. What he was trying to do, bringing players through and everything, was really good. But yeah, he just sort of ran out of steam and ideas, I think. And I think a change was needed. And we all expected Chris Hughton, but that never materialised for one reason or another. And there was a lot of people quite surprised when it came through, and Dean Holden had got the job, to be honest. But he's a fantastic guy. He really is. You can tell that he's a no nonsense man. He's got 2 really experienced assistant managers or assistant coaches alongside him, Keith Downing and Paul Simpson, who are both, England under 19s and England under 17s, I think they were. So they've come with a lot of pedigree and a lot of ideas. We're playing attacking, free-flowing, forward-thinking, high-press football, and it's a welcome step change from the last few seasons where we were sort of nicking a win here and there and going on the defensive when we go 1-0 up and lining up as a team to face the opposition rather than going out and playing our game and not worrying about what we're facing almost, which seems to be working really well at the moment. So I'm although we were surprised and not massively excited about Dean Holden's appointment, and everyone would say the same, I'm sure. What you can't argue with it at the moment. He's doing a great job, and long may that continue. So, as I've said a few times on podcasts and radio and things, he's got nothing to lose. People didn't expect him to get the job, so he's got a 12-month contract to just go out and do his best. If he doesn't, then there's that level of expectation that Chris Hughton would have brought. The expectation is nowhere near with Dean Holden. And I think if you look at the betting at the start of the season, we were like 17th favourite to win the league, for example. So yeah, it's it's definitely an interesting time, and the fact that there's no fans there, it almost enables them to focus on their game and not be influenced by the fans, which it seems to be working all right for us at the moment.
Yeah, it relieves a lot of pressure on Dean Holden, doesn't it? Because he's
Exactly.
not got the fans breathing down his neck constantly at every match.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's and at the moment they wouldn't be. There'd be, the songs would be coming out about Dean Holden
Yeah.
and everything. But yeah, it just it's almost like takes one element out of the game, and I think it's a bit of a science experiment almost at the moment. Look at these results in the Premier League. Aston Villa beating Liverpool by, was it 7-2 or whatever it was,
7-2, yeah.
and Leicester beating Man City at Man City, I think that was. It's taking one element out has changed the game. It's changed the game, and anything could happen. Anything could happen this season in terms of who will win the league, who will win the championship, and it might just work out all right for us. Who knows?
So let's just talk a little bit more about this season then in the future. It's the international break as we're recording this, so no weekend Bristol City games for us to talk about this time, but it's been a really good start to the league season so far, hasn't it, Patch? You find yourselves top of the pile after 4 wins out of 4. Did you expect that?
I have to be honest and say no. It's been an absolutely fantastic start. Our squad is unbelievable at the moment. It's Lee Johnson built up a squad, and Dean Holden has come in, added a few really great experienced players to the team in Chris Martin up front from Derby, who is an absolute revelation. Chris Brunt, who hasn't hit the ground running due to fitness, but him in the dressing room and the way he will be a big thing for us in this season, I'm sure. And Alfie Mawson at the back, who was a £20 million player last season. So we've got some great signings added to our already great squad, and we've got people like Liam Walsh, who was player of the season in League One last year, to come back in. We've got Joe Morale, who is a starter regularly for Wales, who you can't get in the team. Several players to come back in. Joe Williams that we bought from Wigan, who we haven't even seen yet, who is going to be fantastic, I'm sure. So yeah, a really, really good squad, really exciting. Our player of the season the last 2 seasons, Famara Zizou, who started up front for Senegal last night. He's not getting in the team because you've got Martin and Wells doing so well up top. You've got Antoine Semenyo, who is a product of the youth system, to come through as well, and he's come on and started in some of the Carabao Cup games, and he's looking like a real prospect this season as well. So we are really spoiled. We've got two young centre backs playing alongside Alfie Mawson, Taylor Moore and Zach Viner, both sort of products of the system. More so Zach Viner. I think Taylor Moore came from France, a French team, Lens, I think, but that was a few years ago, and he's been with us sort of 4 years and has been off on loan. He joked to about 100 odd clubs, but actually not that many. But him and Viner alongside Mawson have been an absolute rock so far this season. Dan Bentley was a man possessed in the last game. I don't know if you saw any of his saves, but at least 1 or 2 world-class saves. He's got Max O'Leary breathing down his neck as a number 2, who's a great goalkeeper, again young. So it's looking really good. We've got a great balance of old heads and young heads, which is always good because they're going to sort of rub off on each other. So I'm really excited, and it's just sort of teed up really well. We've got also another person whose birthday is today, Tyreek Bakinson, or Backinson as we now know. He's 22, and no one expected him to be in the team, the first team, at this point in the season, this season. But he got an opportunity, and he's basically what we've been missing for so many years. Someone who sits just in front of the front 3 and just behind the sort of 2 attacking midfielders that we've got, Patterson and Vyman. And he just marshals and plays the simple passes, and we've just really, really missed that. So it's looking so good. It's very exciting. Some people would say that the international break has come at a bad time, but I don't think it has. I think we've played so many games in quick succession and we were just starting to look a little bit leggy in some areas in the last game up at Forest. So I think the international break has come at the right time for us. So it's one of those things that we'll get back next week, next Saturday up at Barnsley, and just carry on where we left off.
So how long do you think it'll be maintained, and what is the realistic goal, do you reckon, for the season for Robins fans?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think I don't know what the expectation is, to be honest. Everyone's probably different, but the expectation has to be playoffs, minimum playoffs, because as I said, we've got the ground, we've got the training ground, we've got the fan base to get up into the Premier League. It's something that, God, I hope if we do get up into the Premier League, we're able to actually go to the games, because that would be horrendous, wouldn't it? Getting up to the Premier League first time ever and not being able to go to any games, but
That'd be horrible.
A long time off. But my expectation from what I've seen so far, and the league this season, the fact that the Championship is so competitive, anyone can beat anyone. It's really a competitive league, but with the likes of sort of Leeds out of the way, who were sort of head and shoulders above everyone else and West Brom and teams like that, are head and shoulders above everyone else. It really is anyone's season this season, and why not ours? Why not ours with the squad that we've got, the competition for places, the harmony in the club? It's all just looking so positive. But speak to me again in 6 months, and we'll see where we are. But as I said, Dean Holden's got nothing to lose. He just play his own game, keep learning from his two wingmen, and who knows? We could even be in the top 2 this season. I'd take our position now, if that's all right.
So, if you had to give me a definitive answer on where you think Bristol City would finish this season, what would you say?
3rd. I think we might just miss out on the top 2. I've seen 6 or 7 games this season, and if we can continue playing at any sort of level near we've been playing, then playoffs has got to be achievable. But what we do struggle with, and sort of I'm going on the experience with Lee Johnson and not Dean Holden, because he hasn't really had a full season. We do struggle in that final sort of 20-30% of the season. So the last sort of like 10 games, we just always seem to drift, and that's going to be Dean Holden's challenge is picking us up. When we will lose at some point, is how he reacts. Does he tinker the team? Does he tinker the formation? How does he keep the squad happy as well as the starting 11? And that last sort of 10 games, how does he keep that momentum going and keep it going all the way to the end of the season? Because the mentality has not been quite right the last sort of 5 years at least, where we struggle to keep going. It's like job's done, one foot on the beach. That's the sort of mentality we've almost had, and it's hit us hard. So it's going to be an interesting one, but I'm going to stick my neck on the line and go for 3rd.
So what we might do then is later on in the season we might check back in with you and just to see how that prediction's going.
Yeah, well, I might be busy potentially, but hopefully I'm not. Yeah, depending on what I'm saying.
So anyway, best of luck for the season. Just before we go, you obviously, we've mentioned it a few times, you host your own podcast, don't you? Tell us a little bit about that.
So it's called 3 Peeps in a podcast. 3 the number space PEAPS in a podcast, and it was started about 5.5 years ago. Not Bristol City related at the time. It was just 3 mates. We used to work together back in the sort of early 2000s, and we would always go out to lunch together, and people often called us like the 3 peas in a pod. So that's where the name came from. And it started out just the 3 of us chatting around a table about whatever was relevant. We've got segments. We've got things like the Room of Doom, which is basically Room 101, where we all put something forward that annoys us. Then it sort of developed into, right, let's get some guests on now. So we started to get in sort of local celebrities on. We've had a few sort of ex-Bristol City players, as well as people like Justin Lee Collins, who's from Bristol, Dean Edwards, a TV chef, Joe Sims, a Bristol actor, Alex Beresford from Good Morning Britain, all these sort of famous Bristolians that we've had on the podcast. And I think the list goes on. We had Jeff Stelling on a few months ago. That was a really, although he's got nothing to do with Bristol, obviously the opportunity arose, so we took it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It really has grown. But we also earlier this year, added a bonus show, which is all about Bristol City. It's post-match reaction to the City games. So it's myself and Matt Withers, who writes for the Bristol Evening Post. Him and I, and then it'll be a third person as well, whether a fan or an ex-player or something, where we will just do our immediate sort of download of what we thought of the game, run through sort of what we thought about the starting lineup, what the key moments in the game, player ratings, and then whatever the news that week was about Bristol City. And that's gone really well. And we've got two shows really running at the moment, the bonus show and the regular show. And some listeners have transitioned from one to the other and vice versa. So, yeah, it's really exciting times. And I absolutely love doing it, to be honest. I don't know about how long your podcast is going, but it's something that for the past 5 years we've done. And it's opened doors for us. We've gone to places we wouldn't have gone to, really, and spoke to people we wouldn't necessarily have spoken to. Who do you support, by the way?
Grimsby Town.
Mr. Holloway. He's an interesting story in himself. He actually lived on the same street as me, in the sort of the 90s. And obviously being heavily associated with Bristol Rovers, a bit of a strange one. He was someone who would, whenever he would come down Ashton Gate with the away team that he was managing at the time, it was an absolute barraging that he got. But he dealt with it so well. And towards the end of his sort of managerial career with teams that were coming to play us, it was almost turned into cheers, to be honest, because he became such a high-profile Bristolian that I think quite a lot of people really grew to love him. And I say love's a bit extreme, but like him. And I remember the last time he came down, he was actually clapped off by people rather than booed off.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, and I actually thought that there was a chance that he may be our manager one day. It was almost at that level, and there's probably people listening who are Bristol City fans saying I'm talking absolute tripe, but because he is such a Bristol Rovers person, it would never happen. But I just thought there was an outside chance at one point. But I'd love to get him on the podcast actually and talk to him about his time in living in Bristol and all of that sort of thing. So,
he'd be a good one.
Let's not write that off.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Patch, and good luck to Bristol City for the rest of the season.
Brilliant. Enjoyed it. Take care.
So, earlier on in the episode, we heard from Toby Osborne, the chief commentator at Robins TV. So let's join him again and hear about his thoughts on the current manager, Dean Holden.
Dean Holden has become the kind of man manager that you almost need, I think, with the modern day footballer. A lot of those footballers, I feel, these days need an arm around the shoulder, and it's about adapting the way you coach certain players. And I think maybe Lee Johnson had a slightly sterner, more distant approach with the players, more into the kind of tactical side of the game. And I think that's where Dean Holden has changed things, the mentality and the culture around the club significantly, because everybody's playing with a smile on their face. But through that, we've obviously got all these central midfield options, but Tyreek Backinson, who's a young lad formerly of Luton, has come in and stepped up. He was on loan with Plymouth last season. He stepped up and has been magnificent since he's come in, and he's kept the likes of Joe Williams out the side. He has been injured, admittedly. Joe Williams, who we signed in the summer from Wigan. Joe Morrell, who featured for Wales against England last week. Also, the likes of Liam Walsh, who was on loan at Coventry last season and was their player of the season. And Casey Palmer as well, who's such a talented player, brought in from Chelsea, but has really struggled to nail down a spot in the side. And it's also meant that Dean Holden has changed his formation slightly to more of a 5-3-2, and we've had to move players like Nicholas Eliasson on, who's kind of suffered from that particular formation. But yeah, really strong start to the season for Bristol City, and hopefully it will continue as well. Finally, it feels as though we have cover in the areas that we've been weak in over the years, and I think, well, based on the opening 4 games, we could surprise a few people this season in terms of chances created and pass accuracy. We're so much further ahead than we were last season, and the fan base were kind of growing a bit frustrated based on that. But Dean Holden is doing all the right things, saying all the right things. He recently, I think a couple of weeks ago actually, popped down to one of the biggest pubs that's kind of most popular with Bristol City fans in Bedminster, and spent the night 3 or 4 hours just chatting to City fans, playing pool and all that sort of stuff. So he's very into kind of bringing the fan base as close as possible to the players, which I think is very important for a lot of Bristol City and fans in general at the moment. So hopefully City can go on, push on, and keep hold of that top spot at the top of the Championship. There is going to be defeats along the way, I am sure, but come the end of the season, the aim surely still has to just be trying to get into the playoffs, because City fans have had to wait since the 2008 campaign, 2007, 2008, the last time we were in there in the playoffs, and we went to Wembley and had our hearts broken by Hull City and Dean Windass. So hopefully Dean Holden can be the man to lead us there this season and to the Premier League, which is where we all want to be. So yeah, that's Bristol City these days, and hopefully the good form continues. Cheers.
And that is the end of this episode. Thank you to Patch and Toby for talking to us, and of course thank you for listening. If you'd like to get involved in the 92 Podcast and talk about your club, find us on Twitter and Instagram at the 92 Podcast, or email us the92podcast@gmail.com. And if you haven't already, make sure you review and subscribe to the podcast wherever it is that you found this episode. Next time I'll be looking at another club in the 92. See you then.